They say that evil begins when you start treating people as if they are things. This line from Billy Graham isn't just about what others do to us, but also about what we allow in our lives. Every person in your circle, every influence you accept leaves a mark. The question is, what kind of mark are they leaving? In today's world, the concept of witchcraft might seem outdated or exaggerated. Our minds might immediately picture pointy hats and cauldrons. But let me challenge you. The greatest threats to your soul often come disguised as ordinary things, subtle, calculated, and sometimes hidden behind friendship or charm. This message isn't meant to spread fear, but to equip you with discernment. Chosen ones, there are spiritual forces at work, forces that aim to manipulate, control, and distract you from God's purpose. That battle isn't new. It's been raging since Eden. So today, let's uncover 5 signs that someone might be a witch seeking to manipulate and curse your life. This isn't about condemnation or paranoia, but clarity and freedom. Because when you can see the darkness for what it is, you can stand firmly in the light of truth. Let's uncover these shadows together. Sign number 1, they constantly fish for personal information. One of the clearest signs that someone in your life may have harmful intentions is their persistent need to fish for personal information. They're always prying into your private life, wanting to know every little detail about you. It might seem innocent at first, but over time you'll notice a pattern. This person doesn't just ask out of curiosity, they feel entitled to know your business. They'll push for information about your relationships, your career, your plans, even your family. They might ask about your goals, finances, or what's going on in your home. When you hesitate to share or keep something private, they get upset. They'll say things like, "Why didn't you tell me? Are you hiding something? Why are you being so secretive?" Their questions aren't about celebrating your victories or supporting your dreams. They're about control. As Billy Graham said, secrets have a way of making themselves known even through the most innocent conversation. The more you share, the more power you give to those who might use it against you. Here's the problem. Witches, or those influenced by dark forces, need information to act, whether for rituals, spells, or just spreading negativity. They thrive on knowing your next move. They'll use what you share to block your progress, sow doubt, or cause your plans to fail. That's why you may notice things falling apart after you tell this person about your dreams or next steps. Think about it. How often have you shared exciting news only to see it unravel shortly after? Perhaps you were planning to start a business, buy a house, or make a big career change. And as soon as you told someone, it didn't happen. These aren't just coincidences, they're red flags. This is why the Bible says in Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Guarding your heart means being careful with what you share and who you share it with. Not everyone in your circle is cheering for you, and some may be actively working against you, whether intentionally or unknowingly. People who fish for information often overstep their boundaries, even trying to force their way into your life. They may pretend to be close to you wearing a mask of friendship or concern, digging into things that should remain private. The best way to protect yourself is to move in silence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your life. Keep your plans between you and God until it's time to share. Be mindful of the patterns and energy you feel after talking to someone. If someone always brings chaos, doubt, or negativity after you share, it's a sign to draw back and set boundaries. Remember, not everyone asking questions is a friend. Stay prayed up, use discernment, and let God guide who you let into your inner circle. Sign number 2, they engage in idolatry. Another clear sign that someone in your life may be influenced by dark forces is their engagement in idolatry. Idolatry isn't just about worshiping statues or ancient gods. It can take many forms. It happens whenever someone elevates something or someone to a place that belongs only to God. The person engaging in idolatry may not see anything wrong with it. For example, they might worship a celebrity, a lifestyle, or even themselves. Take, for instance, the way some fans worship Beyoncé, calling her mother God, defending her blindly, and acting as though she can do no wrong. Beyoncé knows this power and control over her followers. They'll attack anyone who speaks against her, going to extreme lengths to protect the one they've idolized. As Billy Graham once said, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. The danger of idolatry is that it doesn't just distort what we worship, it changes who we are. When someone worships anything other than God, their character starts reflecting the flaws of their idol instead of the perfection of their Creator. But let's take a step back. This isn't just about celebrities. Idolatry can happen with anything that takes priority over God. Maybe it's a career, a relationship, money, or material possessions. Idolatry blinds people. It shifts their focus from worshiping the Creator to worshiping creation, whether that's another person or their own status. The Bible is clear about this in Exodus 20:3-4. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. God is deeply against idolatry because it leads us away from Him. Now, look at how idolatry plays out in your relationships. Does someone in your life seek power or control over others? Do they love being idolized, basking in attention and admiration, and using that influence to manipulate others? Or do they idolize material things, constantly chasing wealth or status and pressuring you to do the same? These behaviors aren't harmless. Idolatry opens spiritual doors that lead to manipulation and control. When someone is entrenched in idol worship, whether it's of themselves, their lifestyle, or another person, they invite forces that don't align with God's will. Don't let their obsession with control or material things pull you into the same mindset. If someone constantly pressures you to adopt their values or worship what they worship, take a step back and set boundaries. Idolatry might seem harmless at first. It may even look attractive or justified. But in the end, it's destructive. Stay rooted in your faith and keep your focus on God. When you worship Him alone, you'll find true peace and freedom. Sign number 3, they love manipulation and control. Another clear sign that someone in your life may be influenced by dark forces is their love for manipulation and control. Witches, or those with harmful intentions, need control to feel powerful. They thrive on manipulating people in situations to get what they want. It's all about domination and power for them, and they'll go to great lengths to achieve it. Think about it. Have you ever encountered someone who seems to have a hold on people around them? They don't need to be physically present to command loyalty or stir up conflict. There are celebrities whose fans blindly defend them, even to the point of hostility, while they remain completely detached. That's control on a massive scale. But it's not just celebrities. Manipulation can show up in everyday relationships too. Some people may use spells or other tactics to manipulate others and force relationships. If you have to manipulate someone to make them love you or stay with you, it's not real love. It's control. As Billy Graham said, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you endure. Manipulators depend on the willingness of others to go along with their tactics, thriving on your hesitation to draw boundaries or refuse them. Why would anyone want a relationship built on that? Why would anyone desire love that's coerced rather than freely offered? Manipulators don't care about love, they only care about power. They'll do whatever it takes to keep control using guilt, fear, or subtle emotional gain. These actions may not seem like witchcraft at first glance, but they follow similar patterns of control and manipulation. A manipulator doesn't respect your boundaries. They see them as obstacles to overcome. They'll twist words, use flattery, or even play the victim to make you feel obligated. The Bible warns us against this in Galatians 5:1. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. God's will is for us to live in freedom, not under the weight of someone else's control. Sometimes manipulators appear as caring friends or family, saying things like, "I'm just trying to help you," or "you'll regret it if you don't listen to me." However, their so-called help often feels like control because it is designed to make you question your decisions and rely on them for guidance. Manipulation can be subtle or overt, but its effect is always the same. It binds you. This is why it's crucial to set boundaries and pray for discernment when someone's influence becomes overwhelming. If their role in your life feels oppressive, it's time to reassess. God wants us to live in freedom, empowered by His Spirit, not chained by another's manipulation. Stay grounded in His truth and remember, no one has the right to control your life except God. Sign 4, they practice or encourage occult activities. Another clear sign that someone in your life might be influenced by dark forces is if they practice or promote occult activities such as magic, voodoo, divination, fortune-telling, or witchcraft. These practices contradict God's word and invite spiritual harm. As Billy Graham said, shallow men believe in luck or in circumstance. Strong men believe in cause and effect. People drawn to the occult often seek shortcuts, power, or answers outside of God's design. People drawn to the occult often seek shortcuts, power, or answers outside of God's design. What they fail to realize is that every action in the spiritual realm has consequences, and dabbling in these things invites forces they cannot control. Some may try to recruit you into their rituals, offering seemingly harmless things like crystals for positive energy or candles for manifestation. They'll insist that it's harmless, but this is how the enemy deceives, by making darkness appear attractive. The Bible is clear about this in Deuteronomy 18:10-12. God calls such practices an abomination. Consulting mediums, speaking to the dead, or casting spells are rejections of God's authority and invitations for the enemy to take hold. Sometimes people involved in the occult will give you specific instructions, like performing rituals at certain times or repeating phrases to bring love or wealth into your life. It may seem like harmless superstition, but in reality you're opening doors to spiritual curses. They may say it's just a way to connect with the universe, but if someone encourages you to partake in any form of magic or spiritual rituals, they're leading you into darkness. Be careful how they try to draw you in. They might act like they're helping you, but they're setting you up for spiritual harm. Even dreams where you believe a loved one is visiting could be deceptive. It might not be your grandmother in your dream, but a spirit trying to access your life. What can you do? Stay rooted in God's truth, pray for protection, and put on the full armor of God as Ephesians 6:11 teaches, so you can stand firm against the enemy. Stay away from anything hinting at the occult, no matter how small. Sign 5, negative patterns follow their presence. Another sign that someone may be influenced by dark forces is if negative patterns always seem to follow their presence. When you share good news, perhaps you're starting a business, buying a house, or taking a big step forward, suddenly everything falls apart. At first it may seem like bad luck, but when it keeps happening every time you share something with that person, it's worth a second look. As Billy Graham said, people may hear your words, but they feel your attitude. Some people carry an energy of jealousy, envy, or bitterness, even if they don't express it directly. That energy can affect your life, especially if you open up too much to them. There are people who act happy for you, but secretly don't want you to succeed. It could be a friend, family member, or co-worker. When you share your plans, they may react with fake enthusiasm or subtle negativity. Suddenly, things start going wrong. Plans fall apart, obstacles arise, or you find yourself restarting over and over. Why does this happen? People under dark influences often carry a spirit of envy or sabotage. They may not actively work against you, but their negative energy can create blockages in your life. This is why it's important to move in silence. Not everyone needs to know what you're working toward. Pay attention to how people react when you share good news. Do their expressions change? Does their mood shift? Do they ask too many details about your plans? These are subtle signs that their intentions may not be pure. Often those closest to you may carry this energy. Jealousy isn't always obvious, but it's powerful. Some people can't bear to see you doing better than them, and they'll project negativity onto your life, whether intentionally or unintentionally. The truth is, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. If you notice these negative patterns, don't panic. Stay prayed up, ask God for wisdom, and trust Him to protect you. You have the authority to break any spiritual attack through prayer and faith. As we conclude, remember that spiritual battles are real, but so is the victory we have in Christ. The 5 signs we've discussed: those who fish for personal information, engage in idolatry, manipulate, practice occult activities, or bring negativity into your life, are more than behaviors to avoid. They are warnings to guard your heart. Discernment is your defense, and prayer is your greatest weapon. Stay vigilant, stay prayed up, and know that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. God has equipped you with His armor and spirit to stand firm in the face of any challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're diving into a profound topic that explores the unseen realm, the world that operates beyond the physical eye. We all know that life, in its very essence, is not merely about what we see, what we touch, or what we hear. There are forces at play that we often overlook. And sometimes those forces manifest themselves in the people around us. It's crucial to understand that the nature of influence can either uplift or lead one astray. Among the many things we must discern in life, we must also learn to discern the spirits and behaviors of those we encounter daily. Sometimes there are subtle signs that someone in your life may be walking in a different spiritual path, one that might not align with the principles you hold dear. Now, I want you to listen with the depth of understanding that every word spoken today is to sharpen your discernment, then written for understanding so many different levels. Now, I'm not talking about children. This is talking about adults. They produce spirits in. How do we discern the signs of someone in our life who may be walking in a way that could negatively affect us spiritually? There are certain characteristics, subtle yet significant, that reveal the nature of someone who operates under influence that is not in alignment with the truth. These are not mere coincidences, but signs that, when observed closely, will reveal the true nature of that individual. I want to share with you 5 of these signs, 5 characteristics that may indicate that someone in your life might be walking under the influence of manipulation. Now, manipulation is not just about power or control in the stereotypical sense we often imagine. It's about the manipulation of spiritual forces, the use of unseen power for personal gain, control, or influence over others. First, you will notice that they have a subtle but strong influence over others, especially when it comes to manipulating emotions and perceptions. People who are walking under this type of spiritual aura often have an uncanny ability to control the hearts and minds of those around them. They will never openly show it, but they know how to work through subtle emotional manipulations. They know how to make others feel sorry for them, or how to spur others into action, or how to convince people that they are the only ones with the truth. It's not always direct. Sometimes it's a whisper, sometimes a love, sometimes a gesture, but the effect is clear. People find themselves doing things they didn't plan on doing, thinking thoughts they didn't intend to think, and believing ideas that were never originally their own. This influence is not from a place of love, but from a place of control. It's one of the easiest ways to spot someone who operates with spiritual manipulation. It's important that you recognize this in your relationships, because those who are under the influence of such spirits often leave destruction in their wake. Relationships broken, trust eroded, and hearts left in turmoil. The second sign is inconsistency between their words and their actions. Someone walking in this spiritual realm will often speak with one mouth, but their actions will contradict what they say. They may tell you that they care about you, that they want the best for you, but their actions consistently show something different. They may present themselves as good, moral, or kind, but when you look closely, there is a disconnect. Their words are a cover for their true intentions. This is not just a simple matter of being hypocritical. It's a sign of someone who is deceived, and their behavior will continually show you that they operate out of self-interest and spiritual darkness. You can never build trust on words alone. Actions always tell the truth. The third sign is the desire to isolate you. One of the most damaging effects of this spiritual influence is the attempt to isolate you from those who genuinely care about you. Whether it's through sowing seeds of doubt about others, playing on your insecurities, or creating situations where you feel like no one else understands you, isolation is often a key tactic. They want you to believe that you need them, that you can't make it without them. This is a form of spiritual control. When someone is consistently trying to separate you from your family, your friends, or your support systems, you need to recognize that it's not just about them caring for you. It's about keeping you in a position where they can control your thoughts, your decisions, and ultimately your life. You see, isolation is never a good sign. It is one of the strategies of manipulation and control. No one should ever make you feel like you cannot thrive or function in community. This is a crucial sign that someone may be working under an influence seeking to isolate you, to separate you from those who could offer you the truth and freedom that only come through genuine relationship. The fourth sign is the presence of fear and anxiety. People under this spiritual influence will often use fear to control or steer situations. They will plant seeds of fear in your heart, make you question your decisions, and leave you constantly anxious about the future. Fear is not of God, and it is a powerful tool in the hands of anyone seeking to dominate you spiritually. When you feel yourself walking in fear or anxiety for a reason, it's time to ask yourself, where is this coming from? Does it come, or is someone or something causing me to feel this way? When fear becomes a closer companion, it's often a sign of spiritual manipulation, and you must confront it head-on. Fear paralyzes progress and walking in the full potential that you were created for. You are not designed to live in fear. Recognize that people who attempt to sow fear are not working with the spirit of truth. They may be using manipulation to keep you bound in chains that were never meant to hold you. The fifth and final sign I will share with you today is the inability to accept correction or the truth. A person who is walking under the influence of a controlling or deceptive spirit will refuse to accept correction. They will twist the truth, manipulate situations, and create false narratives in order to avoid facing the reality of their actions. When you confront them with truth, they will either attack you, distance themselves from you, or try to convince you that you're the one who is wrong. They will always have an excuse, always find a way to deflect. This is not the behavior of someone who is walking in wisdom or truth, but of someone who is under spiritual influence, refusing to acknowledge the reality of their actions. Truth is the foundation upon which we stand. It liberates, it heals, it frees us from darkness. Someone who cannot bear the light of truth cannot be trusted. When you notice this consistent pattern of rejection toward truth, understand that this is one of the clearest signs of someone walking in deception. Now, I know this may be a lot to take in, but I want you to remember one thing. Your spiritual well-being is of utmost importance. You have the right to protect your peace, to guard your heart, and to discern who has access to your life. These signs I've shared are not meant to make you paranoid or fearful, but to equip you with the tools to discern the spirits at work in your life. The Bible says, test the spirits to see whether they are from God. This is not just a command. It's wisdom for living in a world that is full of unseen forces. As you move forward, may you be wise in your dealings, discerning in your relationships, and steadfast in your commitment to truth. You were created for greatness, not to be manipulated, controlled, or led astray. Guard your heart, watch your relationships closely, and trust the leading of the Spirit to guide you. God bless you. As we continue, I want to remind you that the signs I've shared are not isolated occurrences. They are patterns, often subtle in the beginning, but undeniable over time. You must trust your discernment, and most importantly, you must trust the power of the Holy Spirit to lead you in all matters of life. When you walk in the Spirit, you can identify deception from a distance, and you can shield yourself from spiritual forces that are not of God. There is no need for fear, because the Spirit of truth resides within you, and that Spirit will reveal what is hidden in darkness. But let's go deeper for a moment. These 5 signs are not just about identifying others, they are also about recognizing the nature of influence that operates through you too. It's critical that you do not only focus on what others are doing, but also reflect on your own life and your own relationships. The enemy works in subtle ways, and sometimes without even realizing it, we may be affected by these influences as well. The key is vigilance, both inwardly and outwardly. Remember, the enemy's greatest weapon is deception. He operates in darkness and does not want you to see the truth. This is why discernment is so important. Discernment is not just a gift, it is a cultivated ability to recognize what aligns with God's truth and what does not. As you grow in wisdom, as you grow in understanding, you'll become more sensitive to the subtle signs of manipulation, control, and spiritual deception. It's not about living in suspicion, it's about walking in the truth. The truth will always expose what is hidden in darkness, whether it's the actions of others or the hidden inclinations of your own heart. You may be wondering, what do I do once I recognize these signs? How should I respond? Well, it is not enough to just identify something. You must act on the knowledge you gained. If you find yourself in the presence of someone who consistently demonstrates these signs, the first thing you must do is guard your spirit, protect your peace. The moment you feel that influence trying to enter, whether through words, actions, or an emotional shift, take a moment to pray and seek God. Ask Him for wisdom, and He will give it to you. Next, don't be afraid to set boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to protect yourself by creating distance between you and someone who is operating under harmful influence. Love is not always about closeness. Sometimes love is about safeguarding your heart from negative influence. Do not feel guilty for putting up boundaries that protect your spirit. The Bible says, guard your heart above all else, for it is the wellspring of life. Your heart is too precious to be continually exposed to manipulation, deception, and control. There's also the need to speak the truth in love. In many cases, those under this influence don't even realize they are walking in deception. They may not be aware of the forces operating in their lives, so sometimes God may use you as an instrument of truth to gently correct or guide them back to a place of light. But remember, when you speak truth, it must be done with love. The goal is not to condemn, but to restore. You may find that as you stand firm in your understanding of truth, others will begin to see the light too. Now, while it's important to protect yourself and set boundaries, it is equally important to remember that prayer is your most powerful weapon. Prayer releases the power of God into every situation. When you feel that something is off, or when you notice these signs in someone's life, pray for them. Pray that the truth will be revealed, that their eyes will be opened, and that they will come into alignment with the will of God. But also pray for protection for yourself. Ask the Lord to shield you from any spiritual influence that is not of Him. The beauty of living in the light of God's truth is that darkness cannot stand against it. The light exposes the lies, the manipulations, and the deceitful forces that work in the background. When you walk in truth, you walk in power, and when you recognize that power, you will not be easily shaken by the deceptions of this world. Let's also take a moment to talk about spiritual freedom. The Bible says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Liberty is not just about physical freedom. It's spiritual freedom. It's the freedom to live unencumbered by fear, manipulation, and control. If you are under the influence of someone who is walking in witchcraft or manipulation, it may cause you to feel bound. You may feel like you are in a constant state of emotional turmoil, unable to make decisions freely or unable to move forward with confidence. But I want to remind you that you have the authority to break those chains. You do not have to live under the control of anyone. And you do not have to remain in relationships that are spiritually unhealthy. If there is someone in your life who is exhibiting these signs, take it as an opportunity to stand in your spiritual authority, command the forces of darkness to flee, and walk in the freedom that Christ has given you. You have the ability to break the hold that any spiritual influence has over you, and you have the power to live in the peace and light of God. Remember, spiritual discernment is not about walking in fear. It's about walking in wisdom, understanding, and truth. You are equipped for this battle. You are equipped to discern the forces at play and to stand firm in your faith. The enemy may try to work through people or circumstances, but you have already overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. No weapon formed against you will prosper, and no spiritual influence will have power over you as long as you stand firm in your authority. Let me remind you that you are not alone. You are part of a larger family, a body of believers, and we support each other. If you find yourself struggling, or if you notice these signs in your life, do not hesitate to reach out to others who can stand with you in prayer and provide counsel. Spiritual growth happens in community, and you are not meant to walk this journey alone. In all things, walk in the peace and strength that God provides. Let His wisdom guide your steps, His love shield your heart, and His truth expose the darkness. Trust that as you continue to walk in alignment with Him, you will find the strength to overcome any force that seeks to stand in your way. You are more than a conqueror, and in Christ you will always prevail. So as we finish today, remember this: discernment is a gift. Protect it. Walk in it. Stand firm in the truth, and you will know how to navigate the challenges that come your way. Your destiny is bright, and nothing will prevent you from fulfilling the purpose that God has for you. As we conclude today, I want you to remember this: your life is not a battlefield of flesh and blood, but a spiritual journey filled with unseen forces vying for your attention, your influence, and your future. The signs we've discussed are not merely warnings, they are invitations for you to stand firm, to rise in discernment, and to guard the precious calling on your life. You were created with a divine purpose, equipped with the power to overcome any force, any deception, and any manipulation that may come your way. But that power is only fully realized when you stand in the truth of who you are and whose you are. You are a child of God, clothed in His strength, filled with His wisdom, and equipped with His authority. The spiritual forces that try to control and deceive are no match for the Spirit of God that lives within you. You have been given the tools to identify darkness and the strength to walk in the light. So as you leave here today, let your discernment sharpen, let your boundaries be clear, and let your spirit be unshakable. Be vigilant, be wise, and never forget the authority you carry. The enemy cannot win if you remain rooted in truth, clothed in prayer, and unwavering in your faith. Stand in your spiritual freedom and walk boldly into the future God has prepared for you. Remember, your destiny is greater than any deception, and the light within you will always shine brighter than the darkness around you. Take these lessons to heart, for they are not just knowledge. They are your weapons in the battle for your peace, your purpose, and your future. You are not just a conqueror, you are more than a conqueror. And with God, you can and will overcome anything that stands in your way. Go forward in strength and wisdom and in the unshakable confidence that God is with you, guiding you and protecting you every step of the way. The victory is yours, and it is already won. Walk in it. Let's end with a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for the wisdom and protection you provide. Help us discern the influences around us and stay rooted in your truth. Guard our hearts, guide our paths, and break every plan of the enemy. Let us walk in the freedom and victory that only you can give. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for watching. If this message blessed you, share it with someone who needs encouragement. Stay safe, stay in prayer, and may God bless you abundantly. We're about to take a deep dive into 7 habits that completely transformed my life in just 1 week. Yes, you heard that right, 1 week. I know it might sound too good to be true, but I promise you, these aren't just the typical tips you hear everywhere. These are real, raw, and deeply impactful habits that I personally integrated into my daily routine. I went through the struggles, the breakthroughs, and the triumphs, and the transformation I experienced was nothing short of incredible. I can't wait to share them with you because they've had such a profound impact on my life, and I believe they can do the same for you. Whether you're looking to boost productivity, improve mental health, or simply make a meaningful change in your everyday life, these habits can help you get there. So, grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive right in. Trust me, you'll want to stick around until the end because these habits aren't just theoretical. They're practical, actionable steps you can start implementing today. Plus, I'll be sharing personal stories and insights from my own journey, giving you a raw and honest look at how these habits worked for me. So without further ado, let's get started. The first habit that changed my life was waking up early. Let me be honest. I was never a morning person. My bed was my best friend, and I used to hit the snooze button more times than I could count. Mornings felt chaotic, and I often started my day feeling rushed and unprepared. But I decided to give waking up early a shot, and let me tell you, it was a game changer. I began by setting my alarm for 5 a.m. The first few days were brutal. I dragged myself out of bed feeling groggy and questioning if it was worth it. But I pushed through, and by the 3rd day, something amazing happened. I started appreciating the quiet stillness of the early morning. There was something almost magical about being awake before the rest of the world, when everything was calm and peaceful. With these extra hours in the morning, I found time for things I never seemed to make time for before. I started my day with light exercise, nothing too intense, just some stretching or a short jog. This not only woke me up, but also gave me a surge of energy for the rest of the day. I also spent a few moments meditating and setting my intentions, which significantly improved my mindset and productivity. Another surprising benefit was that I no longer felt rushed. I had ample time to enjoy a healthy breakfast, sip my coffee slowly, and plan my day. This unrushed start set a positive tone, making me feel more organized, less stressed, and in control of my time. One particular morning stands out, the day I watched the sunrise from my balcony. It was such a simple yet profound moment. As the sky changed colors and the world slowly woke up, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and gratitude. That's when I truly understood the power of waking up early. Now, I know this habit isn't for everyone, but I encourage you to try it, even just for a week. Start by waking up 15 minutes earlier than usual and gradually increase it. You might be surprised at how much it positively impacts your life. It's not just about having more hours in the day. It's about using those hours to create a mindful, intentional, and fulfilling start to your day. The second habit that truly transformed my life was daily exercise. Now, let me be up front. I wasn't always the most active person. I had every excuse in the book. I'm too tired, I don't have time, or I'll start tomorrow. Sound familiar? But one day I decided enough was enough. I committed to moving my body every single day for a week, and the results were incredible. I started small, just 20 minutes a day, mixing it up between yoga, jogging, and strength training. I kept it interesting so I wouldn't get bored and quit halfway through. The first few days were tough. My muscles ached and I felt exhausted. But I reminded myself why I was doing this: to feel better, both physically and mentally. By the 4th day, something amazing happened. I woke up feeling more energized. My mood had improved drastically. I was less irritable, more positive, and felt lighter, both mentally and physically. One morning, I laced up my sneakers for a jog, the crisp, fresh air, the sound of my feet hitting the pavement. It was just me, the open road, and my thoughts. That sense of freedom and clarity was truly empowering. I also started to notice physical changes. My posture improved, I felt stronger, and my overall fitness level increased. But the biggest change was in my mindset. Exercise stopped being a chore and became an act of self-care, a time to disconnect from the world and reconnect with myself. Another personal highlight was trying yoga for the first time. At first, I was hesitant. I thought I wasn't flexible enough or that it wouldn't be a real workout. But after a few sessions, I fell in love with it. Yoga taught me to be present, to breathe deeply, and to listen to my body. It was a transformative experience that went beyond just physical benefits. Incorporating daily exercise into my routine made me realize that taking care of my body directly impacted my mental health and overall happiness. It's not about being perfect or pushing yourself to extremes. It's about finding a form of movement you enjoy and making it a regular part of your life. So if you're struggling to get started, my advice is to start small. Find something you love, dancing, hiking, even a brisk walk, and commit to just a few minutes a day. Trust me, the benefits you'll experience will be well worth the effort. It's a habit that has the power to change not just your body, but your entire outlook on life. The third life-changing habit was journaling. I used to think journaling was for people with too much free time or those naturally inclined to self-reflection. I was skeptical. Who has time to sit and write when life is so busy? But after a week of consistent journaling, my perspective completely shifted, and it became a cornerstone of my personal growth journey. I started simple. Just 10 minutes before bed, I got a plain notebook and a comfortable pen, no fancy apps, no pressure to make it look perfect, just me and my thoughts. The first night I stared at the blank page, unsure where to begin. But I started small, writing about my day, what made me happy, what challenged me. As the days went by, I dove deeper, exploring my goals, fears, dreams, and insecurities. It was like having a conversation with myself. That's when the magic happened. I started noticing patterns in my thoughts and behaviors. I realized that some worries were out of my control, while others required action. One night, after a stressful day at work, I wrote down exactly what had frustrated me. Seeing it on paper helped me process my emotions and gain clarity. Another powerful moment was tracking my progress, documenting small victories, no matter how minor. Looking back at my entries filled me with motivation and a sense of accomplishment. I also started a gratitude section, listing 3 things I was grateful for each day. This simple practice shifted my focus from what was lacking to appreciating what I already had. Through journaling, I discovered more about myself, my desires, fears, strengths, and weaknesses. It became a form of therapy, a way to untangle the complex web of thoughts and emotions. If you've never tried journaling, I encourage you to start. Don't worry about being perfect, just write. You might be surprised at how much clarity and peace it brings. Incorporating Billy Graham's wisdom into daily life is not just about reading his words, but about embracing the process of transformation itself. One such transformative habit is mindful eating. Like many, I used to rush through meals, distracted by my phone or work, barely acknowledging what I was consuming. It wasn't until I committed to a week of mindful eating that I realized how much this unconscious habit was affecting my overall well-being. Mindful eating is about fully immersing yourself in the experience of nourishing your body. It means savoring every bite, noticing the intricate flavors and textures, and being present in the moment. To commit to this, I created a space for my meals, free of distractions. No phone, no TV, no multitasking. Initially, it felt unfamiliar, but it quickly turned into a soothing ritual. Before each meal, I took a few deep breaths, centering myself in gratitude for the nourishment before me. The first thing I noticed was how much more enjoyable food became. Dishes I had eaten countless times before suddenly revealed new depths of flavor, the crunch of fresh vegetables, the sweetness of ripe fruit. It was as if my senses had been heightened. Beyond taste, I also became aware of my body's natural signals. Eating slowly allowed me to recognize when I was truly full, preventing the mindless overeating I had been accustomed to. One simple bowl of oatmeal became a moment of gratitude as I took my time to appreciate its creamy texture and the delicate sweetness of honey drizzled on top. This mindfulness transformed my meals from routine sustenance into meaningful experience. Another significant shift was my awareness of how different foods affected my body. Processed meals left me feeling sluggish, while fresh whole foods gave me energy and clarity. This newfound awareness led me to make healthier choices effortlessly, without feeling restricted. I also started recognizing emotional eating patterns. Rather than reaching for snacks out of boredom or stress, I learned to pause and ask myself what I truly needed. Sometimes it was rest, a walk, or a conversation with a friend instead of food. One evening, after a long day, I craved something sweet. Instead of automatically indulging, I paused and asked myself if I was genuinely hungry. Realizing I wasn't, I opted for a cup of herbal tea, a small but powerful decision that reinforced the benefits of mindful eating. This practice reshaped my relationship with food, improving digestion, enhancing well-being, and fostering a deeper appreciation for the act of eating itself. If you want to try mindful eating, start with one meal a day. Sit down without distractions, take deep breaths, and savor each bite. You may be surprised at how profoundly this simple habit can transform your experience. Another life-changing habit is limiting screen time. In today's digital world, it's easy to lose hours to endless scrolling, binge-watching, or compulsively checking emails. But I realized how much this was draining my energy, affecting my mental health and disrupting my sleep. To regain control, I set a daily limit of 1 hour for non-work for screen use, no mindless social media scrolling, no late-night TV marathons. At first, it was challenging. Screens had become my default way to fill spare moments. But soon I discovered how much more time I actually had. With those extra hours, I picked up long-forgotten hobbies. I read books, sketched, and experimented with new recipes. One evening, instead of watching TV, I took a walk in the park. The fresh air, the rhythmic movement, the sounds of nature. It was a rejuvenating contrast to screen-induced lethargy. That simple walk became a cherished routine, something I look forward to every day. Another remarkable change was my sleep quality. Previously, I had the habit of using my phone in bed, scrolling until I dozed off. This overstimulation often left me restless and fatigued. By cutting screen time before bed, I found it much easier to relax. I replaced late-night scrolling with reading a physical book, meditating, or simply reflecting on my day. The result, deeper, more restful sleep that significantly boosted my energy levels. Mentally, I felt more present. Without constant digital distractions, I was more engaged in conversations, more aware of my surroundings, and more connected to life. One afternoon, I spent hours at a cafe with just a notebook, jotting down thoughts and dreams. That uninterrupted time was incredibly peaceful and productive, something screens had never truly given me. Of course, there were temptations, moments when I instinctively reached for my phone out of habit. But each time I reminded myself of the clarity and focus I had gained, and I redirected my attention to something more fulfilling. Limiting screen time isn't about eliminating technology. It's about using it intentionally and creating a balance that supports well-being. If you feel overwhelmed by digital overload, start small. Reduce screen time by an hour a day and gradually increase the limit. Use that newfound time to reconnect with yourself, your loved ones, and the world around you. You may be surprised at how much more fulfilling life becomes when you step away from screens and engage with reality. That brings us to the close of this journey through 7 transformative habits. Implementing these practices has been life-changing, and sharing them with you has been just as rewarding. Each of these habits holds the potential to create lasting positive changes, and I truly believe they can work for anyone willing to try. If any of these habits resonate with you, I encourage you to start small. Pick one habit, integrate it into your routine, and see how it feels. Adjust according to what suits your lifestyle and needs. Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Small, consistent changes accumulate into significant transformations over time. I'd love to hear about your experiences. Drop a comment below and share which habit you're considering adopting or any questions you may have. Your insights and stories make this community so supportive and inspiring. If you found this valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Sharing this video with friends or family who might benefit from these habits could also make a meaningful difference in their lives. Thank you for being here. Remember, small changes lead to big results. Let's continue growing, evolving, and turning our everyday routines into powerful opportunities for self-improvement. See you in the next video. Stay awesome, everyone. We've been discussing strategies to protect your peace, set boundaries, respond thoughtfully, and manage expectations, all essential when dealing with toxic individuals. But there's another crucial element, the power of self-respect. Understanding and embodying your inherent value, regardless of how others treat you, is fundamental to handling toxic people effectively. They thrive on undermining your sense of worth. Toxic people often chip away at your confidence, criticizing you subtly or overtly, dismissing your ideas, or making you question your capabilities. If you're not firmly rooted in self-respect, you may start internalizing these negative messages. That's their goal, to bring you down to their level because your confidence, integrity, and success threaten them. Smart individuals cultivate and protect their self-respect like a fortress, never handing over the keys just because someone else is having a bad day or a difficult life. They understand that their value isn't up for debate or contingent on someone else's opinion. This ties directly into managing expectations. When you respect yourself, you stop seeking validation from those incapable of giving it. You no longer hope toxic individuals will finally recognize your worth because you already know your worth, and that knowledge is unshakable. However, self-respect is not about arrogance or self-righteousness. It's about recognizing your inherent value simply because you exist. It means treating yourself with the same kindness, compassion, and respect you would offer a dear friend. And here's the key. When you truly respect yourself, others tend to follow suit. Toxic people may not, but those worth keeping in your life will. Boundaries and self-respect go hand in hand. When you respect yourself, you set and enforce boundaries, not to control others, but to protect your well-being. You declare, this is what I need to feel safe, respected, and valued. If you can't honor that, this relationship may need to change. This is a powerful stance, and toxic individuals often struggle with it because they thrive on manipulating others into compromising their boundaries. But when you stand firm in your self-respect, you become much harder to manipulate. Toxic people rely on guilt, shame, and insecurity to control others. They exploit cracks in self-esteem. But self-respect helps close those gaps, making you more resilient, grounded, and less susceptible to their tactics. Cultivating self-respect begins with self-awareness. You must understand your values, strengths, and boundaries. Ask yourself, what matters to me? What am I good at? What do I stand for? Self-respect is rooted in knowing who you are. Once that foundation is established, align your actions with your values. This means making choices that make you proud. It involves keeping promises to yourself, standing up for what you believe in, and treating yourself with kindness when you make mistakes. Self-respect isn't about perfection, it's about authenticity and accountability. An essential aspect of self-respect is knowing when to walk away. from a toxic relationship, a harmful situation, or even your own negative thought patterns. Walking away is not weakness, it's strength. It's declaring, I deserve better and I won't settle for less. Toxic people despise this because it strips them of control. This is why responding thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively is so crucial. When you respect yourself, you're less reactive because you're not seeking approval or validation from others. You don't need to prove yourself to toxic people. You already know your worth. This knowledge enables you to respond with calm clarity and confidence instead of defensiveness or anger. Let's apply this concept practically. Suppose a colleague constantly undermines you in meetings, interrupting you, dismissing your ideas, or taking credit for your work. Without strong self-respect, you might either shrink back and doubt yourself or become defensive and argumentative. Neither is effective. But if you approach the situation from a place of self-respect, your response will be different. You might calmly but firmly say, I'd appreciate it if you let me finish my point. Or you might document the behavior and address it professionally. The key is that you're responding thoughtfully and strategically rather than reacting emotionally, because you know your value and refuse to let anyone diminish it. Managing expectations plays a role again here. When you respect yourself, you stop expecting toxic people to become respectful or supportive. You accept them as they are and adjust your interactions accordingly. This doesn't mean tolerating bad behavior. It means not being surprised by it. That clarity reduces emotional turmoil and helps you navigate difficult situations with greater ease. Self-respect also has a ripple effect. When you respect yourself, you inspire others to do the same. You become a role model for setting boundaries, responding thoughtfully, and maintaining integrity in the face of toxicity. This creates a culture of respect and accountability. But let's be honest. Cultivating self-respect is hard work. It requires ongoing self-reflection, discipline, and self-compassion. It means confronting fears, challenging limiting beliefs, and standing up for yourself even when uncomfortable. Yet the rewards are immense. When you respect yourself, you become less vulnerable to toxic people's chaos and negativity. You stop being a victim of their behavior and start shaping your own experience. And here's the game changer. When you walk into a room with self-respect, people feel it. You don't have to say a word. Your presence speaks for itself. Toxic people may still attempt to bring you down, but they'll find it much harder to succeed because you're no longer playing their game. As we continue exploring strategies for handling toxic people, remember that self-respect is the foundation. It enables you to protect your peace, set boundaries, respond thoughtfully, and manage expectations. It empowers you to navigate complex human interactions with grace, strength, and authenticity. We've already discussed protecting your peace and setting boundaries when dealing with toxic individuals, crucial steps for maintaining mental and emotional well-being. But another key aspect is learning to respond rather than react. When faced with toxic behavior, manipulation, criticism, or hostility, the natural instinct is to react impulsively. Maybe you snap back with sarcasm, raise your voice, or storm off in frustration. These are reactions driven by emotion. And while understandable they grant toxic individuals control over your state of mind, remember, toxic people thrive on provoking reactions. It validates their power. Smart individuals recognize this trap and refuse to fall for it. Instead of reacting, they choose to respond. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and often irrational. A response, however, is thoughtful, measured, and deliberate. Imagine you're at a family gathering and a relative makes a passive-aggressive comment about your career choices. Reacting might involve lashing out, "At least I'm not stuck in a dead-end job like you." Sure, it may feel satisfying in the moment, but it escalates the conflict and creates discomfort. A response, on the other hand, might look like this. You take a deep breath, pause, and calmly say, "I'm happy with my choices." Then you change the subject or walk away. Notice the difference? You maintain composure and refuse to give them the reaction they seek. This is the power of self-respect in action. When you respect yourself, you gain emotional control, respond strategically, and maintain your peace, no matter the circumstances. You've expressed what you're hoping for and asserted your boundaries in a calm and confident manner. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It takes practice and self-discipline. But it's worth the effort because it puts you back in control of your emotional state. And when you're in control of your emotions, you're in control of the situation. Let's connect this back to our earlier discussion on boundaries. When you set a boundary, toxic people will often test it. They may push harder, hoping to provoke a reaction. This is where the ability to respond thoughtfully becomes crucial. Instead of reacting defensively or angrily, you calmly restate your boundary. As I mentioned, I'm not available for calls after 9 p.m. Let's find another time to talk. No drama, no emotional escalation, just a clear, respectful response. Here's another example. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague keeps interrupting you. The reactive response might be to snap. "Can you just let me finish?" Understandable, but not particularly effective. A more thoughtful approach would be, "I'd like to finish my point, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts." Notice how this response asserts your right to speak without escalating conflict. There's an important psychological principle at play here: the space between stimulus and response. Viktor Frankl, a renowned psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote about this in Man's Search for Meaning. He said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Think about that for a moment. Between a toxic person's behavior and your reaction, there is a space. And in that space, you have a choice. You can react impulsively, or you can respond thoughtfully. That choice makes all the difference. So, how do you cultivate this ability to respond rather than react? It starts with self-awareness. You need to recognize your triggers, the situations or comments that provoke an immediate emotional reaction. Once you're aware of your triggers, you can start creating that space between stimulus and response. One technique that helps is mindfulness. When you practice mindfulness, you train yourself to observe your thoughts and emotions without immediately acting on them. You learn to pause, take a breath, and choose your response. This isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about acknowledging them without letting them control you. Another useful strategy is cognitive reframing, changing how you interpret a situation. Let's go back to the family gathering example. Instead of seeing a passive-aggressive comment as a personal attack, you might reframe it as a reflection of the other person's insecurity or unhappiness. And let's not overlook the power of preparation. If you know you'll be in a situation where toxic behavior is likely, take time to think about how you want to respond. Visualize yourself staying calm and composed. Having a plan makes it easier to maintain your composure when the moment comes. Now, let me be clear. Choosing to respond thoughtfully doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or abuse. Sometimes the best response is to walk away. Other times, it's to assert your boundaries firmly. The key is to do so from a place of strength and self-control, not emotional reactivity. Here's another important point. When you respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively, you set an example for others. You become a model of emotional intelligence and composure. People notice that, and it earns you respect. It also has a calming effect on those around you. Emotions are contagious, after all. When you remain calm and composed, you help diffuse tension and create a more positive atmosphere. This ties back to what we discussed earlier about protecting your peace. When you learn to respond rather than react, you take a crucial step toward maintaining that peace. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's negativity. You're in control of your own emotional landscape. And that, my friends, is a powerful place to be. It's a place of strength, resilience, and freedom. It's where you can navigate even the most challenging interactions with grace and dignity. And ultimately, it's where toxic people lose their power over you. Now, let's shift our focus to something equally important: recognizing patterns and learning from them. This connects directly to everything we've discussed: protecting your peace, setting boundaries, and choosing thoughtful responses over impulsive reactions. Here's the reality: toxic behaviors often follow predictable patterns. And once you recognize those patterns, you're in a much stronger position to handle these interactions effectively. Think about it from a psychological perspective. Humans are creatures of habit. We develop behavioral patterns, whether healthy or destructive, and we tend to repeat them unless something forces us to change. Toxic people are no different. They have scripts they follow: manipulative tactics, emotional games, power plays. And they keep using the same strategies because they've worked for them in the past. Whether it's seeking attention, exerting control, or simply disrupting someone else's peace, these behaviors are learned and repeated. And here's where your power lies. When you identify those patterns, you can break the cycle. Let me give you an example. Suppose you have a colleague who constantly undermines you in meetings. Every time you present an idea, they immediately dismiss it. Not with constructive criticism, but with condescending remarks meant to make you look incompetent. This isn't a one-time occurrence, it's a pattern. And once you recognize it, you can start strategizing. The reactive response might be to get defensive, argue your point more aggressively, or try to prove yourself. But as we discussed earlier, that often plays right into their hands. They want a reaction. They want you flustered. So what's the smarter move? Anticipate their behavior and prepare a thoughtful response. You might say, "I appreciate your feedback, but I'd like to hear from others in the room before we make a decision." Notice what you've done. You acknowledged their input without giving it undue weight. You shifted the focus back to the group. You disrupted their pattern by refusing to engage in their game. And here's the key. The more you do this, the more you retrain both yourself and the other person. You're no longer the easy target they once thought you were. You've established a new dynamic, one where you maintain control over your reactions and the direction of the conversation. But let's go deeper. Recognizing patterns isn't just about anticipating the behavior of toxic people. It's also about recognizing your own patterns of response. Because let's be honest, laws speak for the people. Be mad, be mine, be honest, be crisp, be mean, be crooked, be beaten, be mean, be hooked. The problem? These default reactions often reinforce the very dynamics we're trying to escape. If you always shut down, you may signal that it's okay for others to steamroll you. If you always get angry, you may reinforce the toxic person's perception that you're reactive and easy to manipulate. And if you always try to please, you may find yourself constantly bending to other people's will at the cost of your own well-being. So part of recognizing patterns is introspection. Ask yourself, How do I typically respond in these situations? Is that response serving me, or is it making things worse? If it's not serving you, then it's time to develop new strategies. Which brings us back to something we discussed earlier, the power of the pause. When you recognize a pattern unfolding, whether it's someone else's toxic behavior or your own habitual reaction, the first step is to pause. That pause creates the space for you to choose a different response. Instead of reacting impulsively, you can respond thoughtfully. Let's take another example. A family member who always brings up controversial topics at gatherings just to provoke a reaction. You know it's going to happen. It always does. That's the pattern. So instead of dreading it or getting drawn into the same old argument, you can prepare yourself. Maybe you decide in advance not to engage. Or maybe you come up with a neutral response that shuts the conversation down without escalating it. Either way, you're no longer reacting on autopilot. You're in control, and that changes everything. With a few neutral responses that allow you to disengage gracefully, the key is recognizing patterns. This awareness gives you the ability to plan and strategize, putting you back in the driver's seat. You're no longer on autopilot, reacting automatically. Instead, you are making conscious decisions about how to handle the situation. And here's where it gets even more powerful. When you start breaking these patterns, you often force a toxic person to adapt. They are used to receiving a particular reaction from you, and when they don't get it, they are thrown off balance. Initially, they may escalate their behavior, trying harder to provoke you. However, if you stay consistent, they will eventually realize that their old tactics no longer work. This marks a crucial turning point where you begin to reclaim your power. You are no longer a pawn in their game. You are setting the rules of engagement. This doesn't just benefit you, it often has a ripple effect on others. When people witness you handling toxic behavior with grace and composure, they are inspired to do the same. You become a model for navigating these situations. Now let's explore one more aspect of recognizing patterns, identifying red flags early on. Ideally, you want to spot toxic behavior before it becomes a major issue. This requires paying attention to subtle cues, things like persistent negativity, a lack of accountability, or a tendency to create drama wherever they go. When you notice these red flags, it's crucial to address them sooner rather than later. This may involve having a direct conversation, setting boundaries, or even distancing yourself from the person if necessary. The sooner you intervene, the easier it is to prevent the behavior from escalating. However, here's the challenge. Many of us ignore red flags because we don't want to believe the worst about people. We make excuses for their behavior, telling ourselves they're just having a bad day or that things will improve. And sometimes that's true. Everyone has an off day. But when a pattern of toxic behavior emerges, it's essential to acknowledge it and take action. So how do you differentiate between a one-time issue and a pattern? Look for consistency. Is the behavior happening repeatedly over time? Is there a clear intent to manipulate, control, or undermine? And most importantly, how does it make you feel? If you consistently feel drained, disrespected, or diminished after interacting with someone, that's a strong indicator you're dealing with a toxic pattern. Recognizing patterns is about empowering yourself with knowledge. It's about seeing things clearly and making informed decisions about how to respond. When you combine this awareness with the other strategies we've discussed, protecting your peace, setting boundaries, and choosing thoughtful responses, you become incredibly resilient. You develop a kind of emotional armor, not in the sense of becoming hardened or closed off, but in being strong, grounded, and self-assured. You know who you are, what you stand for, and how you will and will not be treated. And that, my friends, is a powerful place to be. There are many essential steps to maintaining your mental and emotional health, but there's another critical component in this process that intelligent people understand deeply: the ability to respond rather than react. What does this mean exactly? Let's break it down. When someone behaves in a toxic manner, whether they're being manipulative, critical, or outright hostile, the natural human instinct is to react impulsively. Maybe you snap back with a sarcastic remark, raise your voice, or storm off in frustration. These are all reactions, and they are perfectly understandable. After all, we're wired to respond to threats, including social threats, with fight or flight. But here's the thing: when you react impulsively, you're essentially handing control of your emotions to the other person. You're letting them dictate your state of mind. Remember what we discussed earlier? Toxic people thrive on this kind of power. They want to provoke you. They want to see you lose your cool because it validates their control over the situation. Intelligent people recognize this trap and refuse to fall into it. Instead of reacting, they choose to respond. There's a world of difference between the two. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and often irrational. A response, however, is thoughtful, measured, and deliberate. Let's say you're at a family gathering and a relative makes a passive, aggressive comment about your career choices. The reactive thing to do would be to lash out, saying something like, "Well, at least I'm not stuck in a dead-end job like you." Sure, it might feel good at the moment, but what have you accomplished? You've escalated the conflict and likely made the entire gathering uncomfortable. A response, however, could be something like this. You take a deep breath, pause for a moment, and say calmly, "I'm happy with the choices I've made." Then change the subject or simply walk away. Notice what's happened here. You've maintained your composure, you haven't given the other person the reaction they were hoping for, and you've asserted your boundaries in a calm and confident manner. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It takes practice and self-discipline, but it's worth the effort because it puts you back in control of your emotional state. When you're in control of your emotions, you're in control of the situation. Let's tie this back to what we talked about earlier regarding boundaries. When you set a boundary, toxic people will often test it. They might push harder, hoping to provoke a reaction. This is where the ability to respond thoughtfully becomes crucial. Instead of reacting defensively or angrily, you calmly restate your boundary. I've already mentioned that I can't take calls after 9 p.m. Let's find another time to talk. No drama, no emotional escalation, just a clear, respectful response. Here's another example. Imagine you're in a work meeting and a colleague interrupts you repeatedly. The reactive thing to do might be to snap, "Will you just let me finish?" Again, understandable, but not particularly effective. A thoughtful response might be, "I'd like to finish my point, and then I'm happy to hear your thoughts." Notice how that response asserts your right to speak without creating unnecessary conflict. There's a psychological principle at play here that's worth mentioning. It's called the space between stimulus and response. Viktor Frankl, a renowned psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote about this in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Think about that for a moment. Between the toxic person's behavior and your reaction, there's a space. And in that space, you have a choice. You can choose to react impulsively, or you can choose to respond thoughtfully. That choice makes all the difference. So, how do you cultivate the ability to respond rather than react? It starts with self-awareness. You must become aware of your triggers, those situations or comments that tend to provoke an immediate emotional reaction. Once you're aware of your triggers, you can start creating that space between stimulus and response. One technique that can help is mindfulness. When you practice mindfulness, you train yourself to observe your thoughts and emotions without immediately acting on them. You learn to pause, take a breath, and choose your response. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means acknowledging them without letting them control you. Another useful strategy is cognitive reframing. This involves changing the way you interpret a situation. Let's go back to that family gathering example. Instead of interpreting the passive-aggressive comment as a personal attack, you might reframe it as a reflection of the other person's insecurities or unhappiness. This shift in perspective can make it easier to respond calmly rather than react defensively. And let's not forget the power of preparation. If you know you're going to be in a situation where you're likely to encounter toxic behavior, take some time to think about how you want to respond. Visualize yourself staying calm and composed. Having a plan can make it easier to maintain your composure when the moment comes. Now, I want to be clear about something. Choosing to respond thoughtfully doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean tolerating abusive or disrespectful behavior. Sometimes the best response is to walk away, as we discussed earlier. Sometimes it's to assert your boundaries firmly. The key is to do so from a place of strength and self-retrieval, rather than from a place of emotional reactivity. And here's another important point. When you respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively, you set an example for others. You become a model of emotional intelligence and composure. People notice that, and it earns you respect. It also has a calming effect on those around you. Emotional states are contagious, after all. When you remain calm and composed, it can help diffuse tension and create a more positive atmosphere. Let's circle back to what we discussed earlier about protecting your peace. When you learn to respond rather than react, you're taking a crucial step toward maintaining that peace. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's negativity. You're in control of your own emotional landscape. And that, my friends, is a powerful place to be. It's a place of strength, resilience, and freedom. It's a place where you can navigate even the most challenging interactions with grace and dignity. And ultimately, it's a place where toxic people lose their power over you.